And hello, and we are live coding. I did attempt to start this video a little while ago, and we ran into a little bit of a snag with bundle install. It just took way too long and a little bit boring. So what I did was I stopped the stream, and we'll start it all over again. So to recap on what we're doing here, we're going to build a very basic ActionCable Rails 5 application based on a tutorial that DHH did, just to see how this works. I have an idea for my next big application that I want to build, and it's going to incorporate Rails 5 features, including ActionCable. So I thought before I get into actually coding my main application, my main project I want to spend a lot of time on, I'm going to go through and run this tutorial and just understand how this ActionCable works and see if I can actually get it going on my system. Because I know some people probably have issues doing these types of things when it's brand new technology. You got to check if your development environment is good and set up properly. So to save on frustration later on, we might as well just run a real simple little application and see if everything's good. So we did run into the first snag, obviously. It was just bundle install takes forever right now. But now that that's done, I'm going to hopefully be able to just carry on here. So we're going to do a Rails generator for a controller, and we're going to create a rooms controller, and that's only going to have one action, which is show. So let's go through and push that through. So we got that. Perfect. The other controller, the other generator we're going to do is Rails G, and we'll throw in a model in there. Actually, before the model, let me show the error. We're going to have an error here because we haven't created the databases yet, but let me just show you. So the model we want to create is message, and it's going to have one parameter, which is content, and that's going to be a text field. All right, now this probably will have an error here. No, we're good. Okay, so sometimes you might get an error saying that the database wasn't created properly, so you just have to go through and run Rails DB create. Now it's not rake anymore. That's the old way of doing it. In Rails 5, it's Rails, and then DB. We'll hit create. I think it may already be created. That's why it went through. No, it needed to create it, so that's fine. I had run into that error before in the past, where if I don't create the database first, the generating of the models for some reason doesn't work. I'm not too sure why, but let's just move on. So we have our controller and our model created, and we do need to DB migrate just so we set up the database. So there's not much going on here. The only model is this one thing, the message, and it only has one parameter, which is content in the table. So there you have it. So let's go into our application and take a look at a couple things here. So in the controllers, which we did in the app, let's take a look here. We have this rooms controller. So inside of here we have a show action, which is the only action we specified that we wanted. And in the show, we want to show something. We'll show messages because it's a chat app. We'll have messages. So we'll grab our messages from the database and we'll just grab all of them. And that's what we're going to show to the user. So I'm just going to save that. And we should go into normal mode and save it. And because we have a show action, we should probably do a template for that. So did I just do that again? Okay. So Control P, we're going to do a show template. And inside of here, let's see. Inside of here, we'll just do let's just call it a chat room, just like they did in the tutorial. And we'll go through here and let's change this. Do we even need? No, we don't need this at all. So we'll just go in here and create a div. We'll give it an ID because we're going to use this later on actually when we use the JavaScript to populate the page. We're going to give this an ID so we can find it, an ID so we can find it. So we'll call it messages. Whoops. Okay. Oh, okay. So I'm already in insert mode. All right. So messages will have a partial rendered out. And we can just simply do render messages, and it's going to know enough. I wonder why it's highlighted like that. I'm just checking. That should be fine. So it's going to know enough to go and find this partial in the messages folder, um, and it's going to be called underscore messages.html.erb. So that's sort of what that line of code should do for us. I'm just checking. I don't know why the highlighting is like that, but whatever. So save and quit. So everyone understands that this is the show.html page. We're passing it a bunch of messages, and we just want to render them. So that's good. We'll save this. Okay. So now we're going to move on. Actually, we should probably include a forum, but before we do that, let's get our app up and running. So we're going to do Control P for the routes, and let's just get this route going. So this is going to be route. Route is going to go to, we have the rooms controller and the show action. Perfect. So let's go ahead and jump into here and Rails S just to see how this is going. Aha. That is weird, but I wonder if we can do it from here. Okay, so hopefully this doesn't take too long again. Okay, so this is sort of what happened to me before. I wonder why it keeps happening. So we're just going to, this active support it wants us to install, so we'll just install that quick. Aha, Ruby. This may be a setup problem on my laptop here, but RVM use 2.3.0 and okay. That's weird because I have that already. So anyways, bundle, actually we'll do the active support one. So we'll do active support because now that we have version 2.3.0 for Ruby going, we should be fine there. And then we'll do a bundle install just to make sure that that's happy, which it was, so I don't know why it was doing that. So what were we working on? Rails S. And we'll take a look at what's going to happen here. Notice that by default Rails 5 uses Puma, which is what I typically use before, but now it's just sort of the default setup off the new application. So we'll go into here and we will just do a localhost. Okay, so we have our application up and running. We have chat room. There's no messages to show, so we're fine. So let's go back and do some more coding here. So I'm going to go back to the show page and add a form in here. So we'll just do a basic form here. We're not going to do anything fancy. We don't need to use any of the Rails little features to create this form. We'll just do something real quick. So input type we will do as text, obviously. And then this is the important bit, the data behavior. So the data behavior we're going to have as the room speaker. And I think that's good. And we're going to use that later on to get the text from here and actually use it with the ActionCable. So there we go. So there's our little form. I'm just going to save that and we can jump back over here and check that it's up and running. Yep, so we can, nothing happens here, right? It's not doing anything. So it doesn't know what to do with it. So, but that's fine. We're going to work on this right now. So here with this render messages, it's not rendering anything because we don't have a partial for that. So what we should do is create a directory. So let's jump on over to, I think that's our, yep. So just create a directory here. So make dir an app views, and then we'll call it messages. Okay, and that looks good. And now we can go back into our application here and create a new file in app views messages, and we'll create an underscore message. Let's see here, .html.erb. And that looks good. So now that we have that, we can specify what our message looks like. So it's just going to be a simple div. And this div will have a class of message. Not that it doesn't really matter at this point, but and then we'll just put in a standard little printing out of the message. And there we go. So remember our message model, it had one parameter called content, so that's what we're going to print out. We should probably close this p tag off and then close off the div. And that looks like it's good. Yeah, I think that's good. So I'm going to jump back over to our terminal again, and we're going to run a Rails generator command for creating our channel. So Rails G was a generator, and we had things like controllers, models, and things like that. Now we have one called channel. So we're going to generate a channel, and we're going to call the channel room, and we're going to have an action on that room called speak. So that's how we actually can talk to another, one thing to another. And this is getting a little bit of annoying. So bundle install. So something is going fishy here. Every time I open up a new tab, this seems to happen. So I'm gonna have to look into that in the future. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm pretty sure I did it in the profile, so in the bash profile. So I think it's just the fact that I have to restart terminal, but I'll do this one more time. RVM use 2.3.0. Okay. And we'll just run through this one more time just to make it happy. Okay. So we're doing this generator of the channel. So let's just do that. Perfect. Before I go on, 1 second, I'm just going to see how to restart terminal. I used to know this, terminal. So we can refresh it. No, that's not what I want. What I can do here is just take a look in here. I think I had it. Sorry for the delay here. I just want to solve this exec shell. So I'm pretty sure that will solve that problem. Where were we here? Okay, so we just generated this channel with the room, and we have the action speak on it. So let's go ahead and look at that. So I'm going to Control P into the room channel, and I'm just going to refresh this with F5, and I get that there. Okay, so this is what the Ruby file looks like for our channel. So we have our room channel. We can subscribe to the channel, unsubscribe to the channel, and then speak, which is that action that we specified, saying like you could actually pass a message between different people in the channel. So we're going to create a stream here. So when you subscribe to it, we're going to stream from, and this is the channel name. So we're going to call it room channel. As far as I can tell, I'm pretty sure we can change that name and be part of different rooms, I guess you could say, as long as that name, that streaming name is different. Okay, so there's the comment right below it. Stream from some channel, which is just whatever channel we want to do. We're not going to worry about what happens when they unsubscribe. You could do some things when somebody unsubscribes from the channel. You could have something happen. But for now, we'll just talk about this speak thing. So at the end of speak, we're going to pass it the data. And the data is going to be a JSON object, I'm pretty sure, that we're just going to pass through and use. So one thing we want to do is create a database entry under message. So we have this message.create. And we're going to pass it the content or the content is going to be data, and in this case it's going to be message. Okay, that looks about right. So I'm just going to save that there, and then we can go through and hook up our URLs, our routes for this channel. So the way that that works is we're going to Control P into our routes file, and we're going to generate a brand new routes mount for, we're going to mount in ActionCable and server. And we're going to have this based off of the URL path of /cable. And that's pretty much all we need to do to connect that up. So it's going to be able to talk to each other through that URL. Let's work on some of the JavaScript now. So this is done. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go over to here into the assets, and under JavaScript, we're going to have a channels directory where we have room.coffee. So in room.coffee, you could see that we have a subscription create for the room channel, where we can connect to it, disconnect to it, receive data, or speak or send out data. So this is on the client side what they can do, and we had previously done the Ruby file for the server side on subscribing, unsubscribing, and speaking. So this is where we're sort of going to connect the two things together. So under connect, we're pretty much just going to leave that. Disconnect, we'll leave that as well. So receive, this is where we're going to actually say what to do with the data that we get. So we're going to use a bit of jQuery here, and we're going to say we're going to look for the messages ID, and we're going to append to that. So append the data, and the data has the message, right? So that's the data we're passing back and forth, this message object. And in this case, we're going to append that to the messages view. And let's see what happens when we speak. So when we speak, we're going to perform the speak, which is the action that we set up, right? So it's going to send through for that action off that URL that we just connected. And let's go through and add some data to this. So the message we're going to pass over, this is the data, we're just going to pass over a message. Perfect. We do need to actually pass that through to this function though. So I'm going to add that to the function call. And then below here, we need to set up a way to trigger all of this. And we're going to do that instead of hitting a button or submitting a form. We're just going to do it so whenever the user types something then hits enter, it actually sends this off and executes all this stuff for us. So to make that work, we're going to use the document here, and then we're going to say on key press. So we're going to look for any key press at all. And if we have a key press, then we're going to look at the data behavior, which we set up before. Remember, if you remember, behavior. And we need this to equal the room speak. So this was all in that template that we already did. So we created that form that had that data behavior on it. And then we're going to have an event on this because we have the key press. And then we're going to do if event dot keycode is 13. Now 13 is the I'll just put a little thing here, return key. Okay. Now we're going to do app.room.speak. And you can see this is what we're calling from above. This is what we wrote there. So we have app.room, which is equal to the ActionCable subscription. And we're calling the function on that called speak, which is going to perform the action speak and pass it the message. So we do have to pass this the message. So speak is looking for it, and we'll pass it the event.target.value. So this grabs the value of that text area. So now we're going to go through and say on the event, we're going to say the target has a value now of 0, of nothing, because we want to clear it. Similar to the way that you would clear, that the form would be cleared on a request submission. It would sort of redirect back to itself and it would be empty all of a sudden. So we want to simulate that, but without doing an actual submission. So, well, we want to submit the data, but we don't want to redirect back to our page. So we're just going to clear out that form by simply doing event.target.value is nothing. And then we want to prevent the default action of the form field by just doing prevent default. So it's not going to do anything if we hit enter. It's just going to ignore the fact that we hit enter, except for the fact that our JavaScript here is going to send the data off to our app.room. Perfect. So I'm just going to save this, not with :W. I'm just going to look at this for a second because I'm trying to understand how I can utilize this feature in my idea, my future idea. So I'm just going to take a second here and see that we're creating a subscription to a particular room. And the room that we're creating the subscription to is labeled as room channel. So I'm just wondering, if we wanted to, yeah, we would need to specify the room dynamically, maybe. I don't know. Let's just see here. I'm going to go into the channel, room channel.rb. So we have room channel there, room channel. So if we wanted to have multiple different rooms, I'm assuming that we would just be changing that one name. So we would have room channel, we could have, like we're streaming from room channel here, but we could have different rooms that we could stream from. And this could be probably based on whatever room the user is in, because this is set on request. Once you change your request, then you could change the room, I'm assuming. So that'll have to be played around with for a bit, but it's good to take a second and think about what you're actually doing there. But anyways, we're done that room.coffee file. So I'm going to move on and change over to the model file and talk about messages for a second. So let's go over to the messages model file. Oh, that's not right. Messages. There we go. So in here, we want to, instead of doing all this like live in the, I guess in the request, well, it's not really the request. It's just what we want to do is instead of setting this every time that somebody passes information through, we want to actually do that in a background job because it's just a much smarter way once you get this thing building out and scaling. It's just better to do things in background jobs that require hitting the database on these, I guess, sort of like AJAX requests. So we're going to do an after commit, after create. And instead of doing after create, we want to do after create commit, which means that it has created the file, but it's also committed to the database. Because if you just do this job perform after it's created, then we could run into conflicts there. We want to make sure that's actually committed to the database before we send stuff off to the broadcaster. And what we're sending off is the actual message to send this off using the channel. So we're going to send it some data here. We're going to send it, first we're going to call the job, which is going to be message broadcast job dot perform. So this is the function that tells it to do this at a later time. And then we're just going to pass it the object itself, the message itself. Okay, that's about it. So what we need to do though is create that that job. So let's go back over to here and do some Rails magics. We're going to have a generator for the job, and we called it a message broadcast. Okay, spelled right. So we'll create this job. That's done. Now we can go over and write what this job does. So back over to here, let's go into, we'll refresh this, Control P. I'm going to go into the message broadcast job. So you see we have this perform method. It's going to just be queued as the default queue. And the perform method, what we'll do is this is where we're going to actually hook it into ActionCable. So ActionCable.server.broadcast, and we're going to tell it where to broadcast to. In this case, we are on room channel. So again, if we wanted to switch between rooms, I'm assuming that this room channel would be the name that we're going to keep changing throughout those 3 spots. And then we're going to pass it some data, and the data is going to be render message. Let's just see here for a second. So the render message will be, we'll have to actually send it, let me think here. Yeah, okay, so we're sending it a template file essentially. So we're going to create that in a new function down here called render message, and we're passing it the message object. So this will be private. Okay, and then we're going to define the render message. And in here, we are going to do an application controller, the renderer in the application controller, and then we're going to render out a partial. And the partial we already created, so it's the messages message, if you remember that correctly. We do need to pass it the data, which is, let's see here. Okay, so we need to pass it locals, and the data is going to be the message, just like that. Good. So essentially we're just going to, we're going to submit the message over, right? It's going to hit the database. It's going to say create. Okay. So let's walk through the actual files here. So we have the controller. So we have rooms controller. That shows everything. And then we have it's the channel. So we have the channel. Rooms channel. Okay, here we go. So we hit our application, it shows all the messages, right? Then if we submit the form, it submits it over to the room channel, and it hits the action speak, and that action then creates a new message in the database with message.create, and it passes it the content. Okay, so now if we go over to message in the database, which is the next step, we're saying after it creates it and commits it to the database, so after that is done, which is what that speak action did, after that is done, set a job on the message broadcast, which will perform later, and pass it the actual message, this whole object. So let's go back and look at that message broadcast job again. Good. So now it's going to perform this later. So under perform, it says using in the ActionCable server, we want to broadcast to the room channel the message that we got. And the message that we're broadcasting isn't just the data object from the database. We want to actually pass it something to render, like HTML to render. So the way that we're going to do that is we create a function called render message, and the render message function or method, whatever you want to call it, is going to create a partial of the messages HTML partial that we created before, passing it the local data as the message, right? So message, all messages everywhere. But we're sort of, I like it. It's sort of clean. It's very simple to do. The only tricky part that I see that this doesn't address is multiple rooms and how to switch between the rooms. But let's just take a second and see how this all works. So we're going to save this. Do we have a Rails server already running? Yes, we do. So if I go back to the cable app here, and I have say something, so I can hit in this and hit enter. Subscription class not found. Command subscribe to our channel, room channel. Okay, so we have a little bit of an error here. Actually, we need to restart. Big thing. Big thing with ActionCable, don't have your server running the whole time. Shut it down, make all your code. When you want to test, restart the server. That's not for everything, just if you're messing around with the ActionCable stuff, okay? So restart your server if you ever touched an ActionCable thing. So let's try this out. So we have here in the logs here, it's just saying we started a get on the cable, and you can see that we have a channel is transmitting, and it's streaming from the room channel. So that's interesting. So let's go ahead and refresh this. I'm just going to close that. Let's test this out. Let's see here. Nothing yet. So I wonder. So it did do something. Channel terms of confirmation. So we don't seem to be. We don't seem to be putting the message onto the screen. I think it's all working. It's just we're not actually placing the message on the screen here. Ah, yes. I'm pretty sure I know why. I think we missed a crucial step. Okay. Now, one thing that we missed, or I missed, not we, I keep saying we, but you did nothing, is the cable.js file. I'm actually going to, this seems to be working. I don't think this would matter. Like, we can change this to CoffeeScript, but it shouldn't matter. This should work. Now, maybe it's the fact that this is a little bit weird. So I'm going to do this. Whoops. I wonder if that did it. I think I'd probably have to restart the server again, but let's restart this. It's very odd. Now I don't see why. Nope. I'm not sure why this would matter if it's CoffeeScript or not, but I'm just going to change it anyways. Whoops. And then this is going to be changed to app. Yeah, let's just change it to something like this. Okay. So now I'm just need to go in, we'll just quit that, and we'll just go in and move from the app, assets, JavaScript, I think it's called channel, no, cable. We're going to move that to app, assets, JavaScript, and then cable, coffee. And I very much doubt that's going to do anything, but we will see. Restart the server. Wait for it to start up this the channel stuff. And it started the channel, looks good. And we will go through and try this one more time. Nothing. I wonder why. This is why. Cannot read property key code of undefined. So we should have probably just checked that out a little bit earlier, and we would have had the error pretty quick. So, whoops. Let's go into here, and we're going to go into the JavaScript, assets, JavaScript channels, and room coffee. And we can see that we have what looks to be a little, yeah, we're missing a little arrow there. And I think that should do it. Good, and I will restart the server. What a dumb mistake for okay. Refresh this, and now we'll test it out. Still not working, but I don't think we have that error down there anymore. Seems to be refreshing still. So there is an error, but it's not easily seen when. Okay, so we have just reading through here just to make sure I don't see anything right off the bat there. Room speaker. I think I do see it. So here, I believe this should be room speaker because I'll save that, and we have that on the show page. So I'll just go over show page, and yeah, data behavior, I called it room speaker, so that could be a error right there. So let's try this out. That's what, when you're starting out this new technology stuff, you're going to run into these little errors there, here and there. So just understand how to debug and don't panic and figure it out. A lot of times it's very simple things, so just keep that in mind. I'm just going to refresh this, and hopefully it works now. And it doesn't. So we have a couple things that changed here. We have okay, so we have this, which was not happening before. We spoke this message, and then we created that in the database. So I could tell you if I refresh this, we can have it there. But this is not working for broadcasting it, which is very weird. So it's saying it performed the message. What could be happening is maybe I mislabeled where to stick this thing, so let's just try that again. So I have the ID of messages. Okay, so let's go back over here. We can see messages. We're appending the data of message. So it seems to be working because it sent it off. It must not be receiving anything. Okay, so I'll refresh this. Interesting. All right, let's just walk through the whole thing. So the show is working. Because when we refresh, it works perfectly the way that it's supposed to. The renderer is rendering the messages, which looks fine. The data behavior seems to be working fine because it is actually sending that off to the database, which is good. Rooms.coffee seems to be working. Obviously, we can't tell because of the receiving doesn't seem to be doing anything, but I don't know if it's a problem there. The document on key press seems to be working. So the the rooms channel might be an issue here, but let's just look. So the app. So we create consumer. That should be fine. It could be the job. It really could be this job, message broadcast job. I'm just going to check one thing, the room channel. Stream from room channel. That looks right. Okay. And then we got the unsubscribe doesn't matter. The speak, we are creating the, that's being created just fine. So save that and we'll jump on over to the job. Okay. This is the last thing that we did, and I'm assuming that it's right, but okay, so we got message broadcast job. So we got the action cable and the server. So, geez. Hopefully this solves it, but we need to pass the message to the perform. And we also need to pass it to here. All right. Very good. All right, so let's see if we got this finally. And we'll save this, okay? And this should work. And there we go. So now it's pushing it through and it is showing up. So let's go into incognito and localhost 3000. So we can see here now we have these two windows open. If I were to do second mess, you can see it shows up in both of them. So that's the whole point of this thing, that it automatically updates everywhere, not just on your own screen, which is easy to do with JavaScript and jQuery. Very, very simple, and some AJAX requests to populate into the database. But in this case, it's doing it throughout all the people connected to this chat room. So that's the magic sauce there. And besides a couple little typing errors, this was pretty smooth. And for the first time running through it without copy pasting anything, with just writing out everything, it didn't take too long. It was very simple. I made maybe 3 typing errors. The one was the big one at the end. I just forgot to pass the message to the different functions, or the methods. Um, but overall, it was very, very successful. I really enjoyed working with it. Very clean, Rails-esque, and you guys, I encourage you to give it a try. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks for watching. See ya.